On today's show, can the Mavs finally trade Tim Hardaway Jr.? Yes, but only to a couple of teams. I'll tell you who they are in today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. With the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform, like the video on YouTube, and comment anything below. Let me know on YouTube. Make a prediction about day 2 of the NBA draft. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Day 1 of the NBA draft came and went. I was on Locked On NBA with Pat and with Mavs draft Richard Stayman, and things happened. Did they matter? I don't know. For the whole NBA? I don't see a lot of things that really changed the landscape of the league. Mikal Bridges trade happened, and that changed things a lot for sure. That was great. Denny Avdija trade, that kind of changed some things for the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade saga, so we'll talk about that a little bit today. We'll talk about, can the Mavericks get in on Brooklyn's fire sale? They trade away Mikal Bridges. They get their own pick back, so now that they can tank, they're going to trade away all their other guys. Can the Mavs get Dorian back? Can they get Cam Johnson? I'll tell you, there's a couple ways that they can, I think. And then I've got 3 players to watch on day 2 of the NBA draft. I got 3 guys that I'm interested in for the Mavericks at 58, or maybe if they move up from 58. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's start here. The rumors are not flying for the Dallas Mavericks, but there are some trickling in. Mark Stein's still doing the great work over there at his Substack. Great Substack. So subscribe to Mark Stein's Substack if you have not. It's must read all the time for Dallas Mavericks fans. And he reports that there's another team that emerged for Tim Hardaway Jr. We've been talking about the Pistons. We've talked about Quentin Grimes. We talk about him as an option for the Mavericks because they've been a team connected to the Mavericks. Now the Washington Wizards are a team that's also connected to the Mavericks. They seem to be open for business. They make the Denny Avdija trade to the Portland Trailblazers. They get another pick. Then they trade and get another pick. And so they're doing a bunch of things. And Mark Stein also reports, he said, I'm told that the Mavericks are working directly with Hardaway's agent, Mark Bartelstein, to help the player find a new home after his 5.5 seasons in Dallas. I'm going to start with this real quick. What do the Mavericks owe Tim Hardaway Jr.? Why come out and say this? Why report this? I always ask why on some of these reports. Why report this? What's the point of saying, you know what? We're not just going to send Tim Hardaway Jr. anywhere. We're not just going to send him to Siberia. We're not just going to send him to wherever and all that. We're actually going to work with him. We're going to work with him to figure out a place where he wants to go. He gave us 5.5 years. He re-signed with us. I don't think that the Mavericks owe Tim Hardaway Jr. anything like that, but why do they do this? Nico Harrison is very good at a couple things. And there's a word that I keep coming back to when it comes to Nico Harrison, and seeing him sit next to Patrick Dumont, the Mavs' new governor, the guy that's basically the owner now of the Dallas Mavericks. Seeing him sit next to him during some playoff games. And I think Nico Harrison is a schmoozer. I think he can schmooze, and I think he's very good at the corporate thing. He worked at Nike for a long time. He represented players for the Nike brand. He was, had to work his way up that corporate ladder. He had to work with executives and some executives that aren't necessarily like basketball people. And so he had to work with them. He had to figure out how to get on their good side, figure out how to convey his message and his ideas. And honestly, I saw this report, and at first I thought, well, that's kind of stupid. What do the Mavs owe Tim Hardaway Jr.? And then I started thinking about it and go, this is Nico Harrison. This is Nico Harrison working his magic, being like, hey, agent, Mark Bartelstein, let's work together. Let's you and I work together on this Tim Hardaway Jr. trade. Because Bartelstein has a ton of other clients. He's an agent that has a ton of other clients, and the agent relationships matter. And the Mavericks' relationship to those agents matter a lot. It's a new regime now. The old is gone. The new has come. And Nico Harrison in his front office, he's schmoozing. And I kind of like that. So I was for that. After I thought about it for a minute, I was like, why are they reporting this? Why is Stein reporting this? And then I was like, you know what? I think I get it. But now the Mavericks are potentially trading with the Washington Wizards. And if you start looking at, all right, who could they potentially trade for? Denny Avdija was kind of one of those guys that the contract matched with Tim Hardaway Jr. They could potentially make that deal. And then now he goes to Portland. And he goes to Portland for 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and they get Brogdon back, which I guess Brogdon can be sent now to make another deal. And so I think that's kind of interesting overall. The Mavs could not have matched that deal. So everybody that was trying to go after Denny, I kept shutting it down because I said, why would the Wizards trade Denny? Well, they would trade him for 2 first-round picks in 2 seconds as well to kind of reset everything. And they're really going for the tank. I mean, they're really going for the tank next year. They got 3 rookies. They brought in Sarr. Now with the 2nd overall pick, they're really going for next year with the Cooper Flag draft. But if you start looking around at players the Wizards could trade for Tim Hardaway Jr., CBA Mav said this really interesting thing on Twitter that I found, and he said the Mavs need to take back $4.2 million or less to have access to the entire non-taxpayer mid-level exception. That's about $12.8 million for this upcoming year, to sign Derrick Jones Jr. back and have a minimum player to fill the 15th roster spot. It's important. All this math stuff is important. All the CBA stuff is super important. The order of operations matters for the Mavericks. And that's why the Mavericks have been so connected to Quentin Grimes, because Grimes make $4.29 million. It's like honestly, tens of thousands too much. Just a little bit. So the Mavs would have to just do a little bit more to make it actually work for them to be able to have access to this non-taxpayer mid-level exception to be able to re-sign Derrick Jones Jr. And remember that Nico Harrison said priority 1A and priority 1B is to sign Derrick Jones Jr. back, to bring him back, to re-sign him back, to make sure he's not on the team. And to me, I think that is appropriate. I think that's good business because you don't want to take a step back if you're the Dallas Mavericks. And losing Derrick Jones Jr. for nothing would absolutely be a step back. There's going to be teams with cap space, and I'll tell you a couple of those right here. But if you're looking around and saying, all right, how can the Mavericks get access to that taxpayer mid-level, get off of Tim Hardaway Jr.'s deal, the expiring deal of him, maybe get a guy back that can contribute, and then also be able to re-sign re-sign Derrick Jones Jr. with that, and maybe a 15th guy with a minimum. Here's a couple players that matched. CBA Mavs said that the 4.2 kind of $1 million player or less, and the team that has cap space, because they have to be able to take in more, because Tim Hardaway Jr. is making $16 million. So they have to be able to take in at least $12 million and then send out 4.2 something so the Mavericks can take that back. Grimes is a player that fits really close. He's very, very close. One of the players that's honestly the closest in the league. And Detroit's projected to have about $62 million in cap space. So that's why they're a prime candidate. Math-wise, they're kind of one of the only teams that you're like, oh, they have more cap than they know what to do with. They have a player that kind of fits what the Mavs want. He could come back and he could actually contribute for the Mavericks. And there we go. The other options for the Mavericks, the Thunder are going to have about $32 million in cap space. Wild, insane that they have that much. They got 2 players that I think kind of fit. Lindy Waters, the hall pass god, and then Isaiah Joe. I don't think they're going to trade Isaiah Joe for Tim Hardaway. Hey, let me give you the shorter, younger version for the older, taller version. But they both make $2.1 million. So maybe they could do something like that, maybe with both of them, but the Mavs would have to send them draft compensation. Do the same thing like they did when the Thunder helped the Mavs out for the Daniel Gafford trade. Thunder is kind of an option. Another option, the Magic are about to have $32 million in cap space. They don't really have anybody that's an option except for Caleb Houston making $2 million. And I don't know that Caleb Houston would help the Mavericks or play or anything like that. But that's kind of an option if they want to go down that route. Magic could really want shooting. And then all of a sudden the Mavericks trade that and they get $14 million. And so then you get taxpayer mid-level exception. You sign the 15th roster spot. And then you're like, okay, well, at least we dumped Tim Hardaway to re-sign Derrick Jones Jr. That would be the trade-off right there. The Sixers are going to have like $53 million in cap. They don't have anyone on their roster except for Embiid, Paul Reed, Ricky Council, and one other guy, John Doughton. They only have 4 guys on the roster. It's kind of insane to look at their cap sheet right now. Go to Spotrac and look at the Sixers roster right now. It's insane to look at it. But Ricky Council makes $1.8 million. I don't think the Sixers are going to be involved in this where you trade Tim Hardaway Jr. to them and all of a sudden it messes up some of their cap. They want it for their big fish hunting. They're trying to go get a Paul George or Klay Thompson, somebody like that. But the Sixers are technically an option. The last one, and guys, this is like it. These are the only kind of options if you want to do a deal like this. The Jazz, they're about to have like $31 million in cap. This is all according to ESPN, these cap projections, so yell at them if they're wrong. Bryce Sensabaugh, they just drafted, last year before? He's been making 2.6 on his rookie deal. And Darius Bazley making 2.4. I don't think Bryce Sensabaugh would play on the Mavericks. Darius Bazley just didn't play on the Thunder and then got moved around, and so I don't think he's playing either. But there are at least players that the Mavs could dump and bring some interesting-ish young guys back. And like those are your options. It's not a good group of players. Grimes is definitely the best player that I listed on all that. And a realistic one. So the Mavs kind of have to push that one through. Kispert on the Wizards makes about $5.7 million. So he makes more. The Mavs would have to do something else. They'd have to send some more money over to the Wizards and take back a little bit more. If you want to match be able to have access to that entire non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Maybe they don't need access to all of it. Maybe it's just enough, but I don't think so. I think they need to get access to all of it, and there's only like 6 teams the Mavs could trade Tim Hardaway Jr. to into their cap space to take back a player that makes it work. The Jazz, the Sixers, the Magic, the Thunder, or the Pistons. And that's it. It's wild. And so that's where the Mavericks are with this. Coming up, let's talk about some of the other options. How can the Mavericks get in on the Brooklyn fire sale? Can they get Cam Johnson? Can they get Dorian Finney-Smith? Maybe. But they'll have to punt on something. I'll talk about that coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app and go somewhere. Go see something. Go see a show. Go see a sport this summer. Go to a Rangers game. Go check out something that happens. I just bought tickets. I'm going to go home and visit my family in Cincinnati, and I'm going to go to a Reds game. I went to Game Time, and no, it's a lie. First, I went to the actual team site. And I was like, oh, it's Reds tickets. I got a bunch of tickets left. And I went there and I was like, okay, there's some tickets here. And then I went to Game Time and I was like, why did I not go to Game Time first? They've got much better deals over there. I can use the all-in pricing. I can toggle the feature that show you what you're going to pay at the end, at the beginning, which is great because you don't get surprised by all the fees. And the tickets that I bought on Game Time were cheaper than I could get on the actual team website, which is kind of wild. You get views from your seat, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, which is awesome. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets for baseball games with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
My first shot, my first make.
Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking us out. Even after the NBA draft was kind of a snooze fest. Appreciate you jumping in and listening to the show today. You are absolutely part of the Raccoon Squad if you listen to the show every day. Appreciate each and every one of you. All right, Isaac, let's get into a couple of the things for the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, they trade Mikal Bridges. They also get their pick back from the Houston Rockets. Kind of a wild deal. I was listening to Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets, and I was like, why did the Rockets just do this? And he kind of talked me into it. The Rockets basically decided, okay, so this whole season, we've been trying to give the Nets their own picks back because we got their picks in the Harden trade. So we're going to try to give you your picks back to get Mikal Bridges to make our team better. And the Nets all season went, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to trade Mikal Bridges to you. We're actually not trading Mikal Bridges. And they're like, okay. And then this offseason, the Nets go to them and say, hey, actually, we would like our picks back. And they're like, okay, well, we've been trying to get Mikal Bridges. And they're like, no, we have a different thing set up. They're going to give us way more. The Knicks, you wouldn't believe how much the Knicks are going to give us for Mikal Bridges. And so the Brooklyn Nets go, so just give us our picks back and we'll give you the Suns picks in like a couple years after our picks. And the Rockets thought about it and they go, all right, well, instead of trying to offer you your own picks back, Brooklyn, for Mikal Bridges, we'll take the Suns picks. And soon we're going to offer the Suns their picks back for Kevin Durant. They just kind of kicked it down the road. So all this to say, now the Nets have their own pick back. They traded Mikal Bridges and got a ton, a whole ton. I mean, honestly, a ton for Mikal Bridges from the Nets because he was like, I want to play with my friends and I will only play with my friends and you got to trade me there. So they got 5 firsts, which is insane. That's like as much as they got for the Gobert deal. Think about that. And so now they have that, and now the Nets can tank, and they're going to tank a lot. So now they have this fire sale. And so they're punting. The Mavericks can go get a Dorian, a Cam Johnson. They could go do that. if they tried and if they had enough and if the Nets agreed to it. They would have to completely punt on Derrick Jones Jr. I cannot find a trade that works to get a Dorian Finney-Smith, a Cam Johnson, a Dennis Schroeder without the Mavs completely punting on bringing back Derrick Jones Jr. because the Nets don't have cap space. Remember, they have Ben Simmons taking out $40 million. Cam Johnson making 23 and a bunch of other guys making like double-digit millions on their books. They're not one of the teams I mentioned earlier that have cap space that can take in a contract and send you less. And then all of a sudden you have space. The Mavericks have space now to make something happen with Derrick Jones Jr. It's a whole math game. This is why Nico Harrison got to the podium and said our number one priority is to bring back Derrick Jones Jr. We have no idea how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. So, and then they just signed Nick Claxton back for 4 years, $100 million too. Okay, 3 trades to be able to get Dorian or Cam Johnson. There was one we mentioned the other day with Lauren Gunn. The one that we talked about, me and Locked On Nets talked about this with the ultimate mock. Dorian and Dennis Schroeder for Tim Hardaway Jr. and Josh Green, just straight up. So you're saying, all right, we're going to punt on Josh Green and his development. He's 23. We think he can be good. We think he can be a good role player for us. But we'll take Dorian, who's older, has like 2 years left on his deal, and Schroeder, who's on a 1-year deal, who's older as well. We'll go for the instant gratification of those guys to fit right into our rotation. Dorian will replace Derrick Jones Jr. Schroeder will help us because he'll eat up some of those minutes when Luka or Kyrie are out, and we need somebody to just create offense and get buckets and all that. We'll figure out something to do with Maxey because we can't have Schroeder and Maxey on the same team. Like, okay. Do you know all the German national team drama? Do you know the reason why Maxey doesn't play for the German national team? It's Dennis Schroeder. I'll tell you that. Probably not going to happen. That one is like, all right, it's very short-sighted to get rid of, to lose Josh Green for that. I don't know that it makes them a ton better. I don't like the idea of Dorian replacing Derrick Jones Jr. As much as you know I love Dorian, he's not the point of attack defender that the Mavericks need, and they were already struggling in that area. It does help you shooting-wise. Dorian's a better shooter than Derrick Jones Jr. Derrick Jones Jr. was a better cutter, lob finisher, rebounder probably than Dorian. And Schroeder can get his shot better than Tim Hardaway can. So yeah, you could probably get better there. But you're losing Tim, Josh Green, and Derrick Jones Jr. if you get Dorian and Schroeder. So that's tough. The other options, if you want Cam Johnson, so a couple people have texted me on the subtext line, have commented, can we get Cam Johnson? All right, you can get Cam Johnson for Josh Green and Maxey and some picks. You got a first in the future. You've got 4 seconds. You probably might take all of them. But Cam Johnson's deal's not that great. He's also like 28. He's not super young either. And so maybe you can do that, Josh Green and Maxey. And then maybe you could do a Tim Hardaway Jr. deal with the Pistons somewhere else, but then you wouldn't really have picks to sweeten the deal there. So maybe you add a Hardy there. Maybe they're interested in that. And so maybe you do something else over there, and you could still have your cake and eat it too. So that one actually, if you do Cam Johnson for Josh Green and Maxey with some of the picks, or all the picks, a first and 4 seconds, and then do Tim Hardaway to the Pistons, say you still do the Quentin Grimes deal. You can get Quentin Grimes and Cam Johnson. Clear enough space for Derrick Jones Jr. That'd be an amazing offseason, honestly. The other problem about Cam Johnson is he's injured all the time. So he might not cost a lot because he's injured all the time. He costs kind of a lot for what he brings. I don't know. It's interesting. If you want Cam Johnson and Dorian, you have to do Josh Green, Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxey. And then you'd probably have to do the first and the 4 seconds to try and make that happen. Because just to make it enough for Brooklyn to say, yeah, let's do that. Because Brooklyn right now is an asset accumulation. They need stuff. They're not just going to take Tim and Maxey and be like, all right, yeah, sure, great. We'll help you out. They want stuff. They need to rebuild. They've been in purgatory for a while over there. So it is possible. And actually, there was one scenario I did mention, the Cam Johnson for Josh and Maxey and picks, and then do Tim Hardaway Jr. somewhere else to a cap space team, where you could actually get both things. You can bring Derrick Jones Jr. back, you get Cam Johnson, you lose some of your guys, but it's interesting. Shuffle the pieces around. Some interesting things. This new CBA is making it real difficult to try and come up with trades and stuff because there's so many other things. There's probably stuff that I'm missing. Like one of you will probably comment and be like, oh, I can't believe you forgot that they can't trade with this team. There probably is. There's just so many different rules. Even Bobby Marks, who's was an assistant GM, has a hard time sometimes when he's talking on some of these shows where he goes, you know what, they could do this. Actually, you know what, they can't because there's this stipulation and all that. Coming up, though, the Mavs can make a trade to get up in the draft, or they could stay at 58. And I've got 3 players to watch for the 58th pick or in the second round coming up on Thursday. We'll talk about those guys coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Isaac, let's get into 3 players to watch on day 2 of the NBA draft. We talked about this a couple days ago, and I gave you 5 players to watch for day 2 of the draft. One of them already went, which is wild. Dylan Jones, who was kind of like the guard version of Grant Williams, like at least body type wise. He already went. Crazy. So this draft is already off the rails a little bit there. But yeah, he went way higher than a lot of people expected. Guys still on the board that I talked about a couple days ago. Bobby Klintman, he's still on the board, but he's probably going to go early in the second round. Jalen Bridges, remember the wing? He's the wing from Baylor, right? I'm really into him. I like him. And then Tristan Newton, he's still on the board as well. Remember, Tristan Newton is the 6'4" guard, glue guy, intangibles, all that stuff. He went to UConn. So those 2 guys, Jalen Bridges and Tristan Newton, I'm really into those guys. I think those 2 guys could help the Mavericks. But I got 3 more players that I think could absolutely help the Mavs. And my first one is Anton Watson from Gonzaga.
Gonzaga forward Anton Watson is among the most versatile defenders in this entire draft class. I'm Andy Patton, the host of the Locked On Zags podcast. Watson is a 6'8" forward who excelled as a perimeter defender across 5 seasons with the Bulldogs, finishing second all-time in steals for Gonzaga behind John Stockton. Watson also improved his three-point percentage and volume of three-point attempts in each of his 5 seasons in Spokane, and now profiles like a 3-and-D wing at the next level. Watson profiles similarly to longtime NBA veteran Robert Covington, especially if he can find consistency with his outside shot. For more on Anton Watson and all things Gonzaga basketball, check out the Locked On Zags podcast, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
There you go. That's Andy Patton from Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Gonzaga. This guy loves his college basketball. Let me tell you, doing a job I could not do. Anton Watson, a 6'8" wing with a 7-foot wingspan, 23 years old. He's been at Gonzaga for a while. Like Andy said, he has improved his three-point shot. He ended up shooting 41% on threes his senior year or his last year in college, but only on 1.5 a game, so not a lot. Great defender, good finisher at the rim with either hand, can post up smaller guys, he can be a good cutter and screener. They kind of used him as a center, kind of used him as a 5 at Gonzaga at times. And so he's definitely an interesting guy. If you want to bring somebody in and try and mold him into this 3-and-D wing, if you take him in the second round, I'm for that. Anton Watson, I'm really into it. I think I saw a lot of things where I go, man, he's doing good basketball stuff. I think he could do a little bit more on the NBA level than some of these other second round picks. So Anton Watson is definitely somebody to watch on day 2, see where he goes. Maybe he falls to the Mavericks. I saw the Ringer had him at 60 or something like that, and so the Mavs, that's right where the Mavs could take him. So that's interesting. He's not going to do a lot else with the ball. The 3-point shot, I don't know if it's real. He's kind of got this release where it goes behind his head, and it's a little bit slow, and so he's got to work on that for sure. But the Mavs have helped other guys with their shots. But interesting guy, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan. I'm interested to see how he defends against NBA guards in space, because if you're a wing defender and you've been guarding centers and bigs and stuff like that, you look a lot better in college than you do against guards in the NBA. Next one I'm kind of interested in is Isaiah Crawford. Here's our guy, Richard Stamen.
Isaiah Crawford is one of the most interesting wing prospects in this entire draft class. My name is Richard Stamen. You might know me better as Mavs Draft. I'm from the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. I got to see Isaiah Crawford actually play several years in a row. I saw him as a freshman, a sophomore, a junior. Saw him in his last year this year at Portsmouth when he went there, which is a postseason tournament for seniors. And Isaiah Crawford is really interesting because he's 6'6", has a 7-foot plus wingspan, massive hands. He plays a lot like Kawhi Leonard. That's always been his comp, is baby Kawhi. Now, he's not going to be Kawhi Leonard probably, but he is somebody that can defend. He can create a little bit of his own shot in terms of getting a mid-range jumper off. He's athletic. He's battled some injuries. But now that he's here, he could be that ultimate do-it-all wing that scales down into the NBA. He's a big favorite for, I think, a lot of teams that value the second-round picks. And also he's a big favorite among people who do what we do. It's draft scouting. He's really popular because of all those tools, that unique wing, big, he's strong, he's developed his body. So look for Isaiah Crawford to have a wide range of outcomes and be a high upside play in the second round.
Yeah, Isaiah Crawford, real interesting one, because you can see it. Like, you can see the vision for there. And all these guys, you're taking a risk because, they're only going this low in the draft because there's a lot of things where you go, all right, there's a lot of ways where this could just go really wrong for this guy. But Isaiah Crawford, 6'6", 7-foot wingspan, 22 years old, like Richard said, plays like Kawhi, athletic, defends well, can defend multiple positions too, shot 39% from three across all his college. He went to a mid-major. He went to Louisiana Tech, so like a step down from top college basketball. And so he's got to take a huge step forward in the competition he's playing against. And so that's the thing where you go, all right, maybe he turns into like a mini Kawhi, but maybe he can't hang. It's like, okay, well, you find that out. 58th pick, or you trade up a little bit and you grab a guy, but he can fit really well. And he can, come in and be 3 and D really early on if he wants to just start with that and then add a little bit more and add a little bit more. But that's an interesting risk, like high reward, low risk type pick if you want to take Isaiah Crawford. Like Richard said, a lot of draft guys really like him. I think that's an interesting pick. So Isaiah Crawford, definitely somebody to watch. Another guy to watch is
Trey Alexander. Creighton came back for one more go-around with the Blue Jays and stepped in to take on the majority of the playmaking duties. I'm Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball. Alexander's a 21-year-old, 6'4", 190-pound guard who was the second leading scorer for an elite offensive Creighton team. 17.6 points, 5.7 boards, and 4.7 assists. He's listed as a shooting guard, but I don't think of him as a classic shooter. He can have an impact in the NBA, but my question is, what is his true positional fit? He's got the size and athleticism to guard 1, I think all the way up to 3, and part of that is his 6'10" wingspan. Alexander will also need to add to his frame to survive the rigors of an NBA season, but I see him becoming a helpful role player. How about Malcolm Brogdon as a ceiling player comp or a secondary playmaker role similar to Chris Middleton? For more on Trey Alexander and all things college basketball, follow and subscribe Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and anywhere you get podcasts.
There's Isaac Shade. Great guy. Great energy. Locked On College Basketball. Locked On UNC too. Tar Heels. The Chris Middleton one is not who this guy is. But I get what he's saying. It's like a secondary playmaker, somebody else that can come in and make a play. Trey Alexander, 6'3", 6'10" wingspan, which is interesting. He's 21 years old. I do agree with the Malcolm Brogdon comparison. Just like a 6'3" guard. Malcolm Brogdon's a little bit bigger than that, but big wingspan, decent spot up shooter. He only shot 33% though from 3, but where he really can shine is good pick and roll creator. Is really good at floaters, really good at getting in that short mid-range spot, creating a shot, mid-range, pull-ups, floaters, things like that. Really, really efficient in that area. He does like a burst off the dribble or like a real shifty handle, stuff like that. Not really great at the rim, like once he gets there. And not great defensively. He's not going to shut anybody down, but he's got that 6'10" wingspan, which can really help at that point and that level too. So Trey Alexander, if you want to go with a guard, like, all right, we just need a guard to come in and run a couple possessions. Maybe it works out and that floater is really great and it becomes like Jalen Brunson level. Like maybe not Jalen Brunson level, but becomes what Jalen Brunson did at second and third year with the Mavericks, where you go, oh, okay, all of a sudden this guy can get his own shot. Like I'm starting to see it. And he's averaging double-digit points and you're starting to see it there. But Trey Alexander, another guy to watch. Again, none of these guys are going to blow you away. None of these guys you're going to go, oh man, the Mavs just nailed this. Jokic picks, Manu Ginobili pick once in, every 2 decades you get. But Draymond Green, second round. There's a lot of guys in second round that end up panning out. And so you just have to draft the guy that does. Anton Watson, Isaiah Crawford, Trey Alexander, guys to watch, along with Tristan Newton, Jalen Bridges, Bobby Clintman. There you go. There's 6 guys to watch actually in the second round for the Mavericks. But there you go. That's some rumors. That's the Mavs in the draft. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me on Locked On Mavs, listening to the show. Appreciate each and every one of you. Subscribe to the subtext if you want to support the show more. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.